Good morning, friends. Welcome to Word of Gord, OBEJournal2019 number 9. Continuing on from number 8, where we were cut off just in the final moments, and I apologize for that. The tablet doesn't always give what it promises. Right now it seems as though I have 52 minutes and 49 seconds, and I'm not sure that's actually what I'll get. The last time I think it was 49 and I was cut off at 47. So bear with me as I climb the tech peasant hill here. Anyway, continuing right on, there's just a few lines to finish off from that last reading, the John Mack, and etc., etc. A few days after the last contact above, suggested to me by Toronto radio host Earl Bruce Knapp on hearing of my John Mack contacts, I was preparing supper at home alone when I felt the presence of my dear mother and father. As I still seemed to be clairsentient as opposed to clairvoyant, there was no vision as such, nothing like the sights claimed by those reporting recently deceased loved ones, standing at the bottom of the bed, smiling and waving hello. Only a strong sense of their presence. Mother seemed bubbly and excited, perhaps merely because she'd finally had the courage to come. It would certainly be no big deal for my father at this point. I should point out my mother had passed earlier that year and my father some, 50 years before. She seemed giddy with the idea of surprising me. My son, the medium. Father had likely shown her the ropes travel-wise, and after a dozen false starts, they'd made it. I could just see it. As I'd been experiencing an intriguing dissonance the previous few weeks, a rather sour disconnect between the me that is the psychic explorer and the me that is the grieving son. This little jolt was just what the doctor ordered, so I played along with their sense of fun, making the kind of small talk you might expect. Nancy was in full teasing mother mode and well out of the sick old lady stuff I'd been seeing on my earlier contacts. It was a treat and certainly a fine way to bring this volume to a close. And a little more here from the last part of the postscript. And so as I continue to blend with the me on other levels, I absorb at least some of their higher vibrations and can feel myself here speeding up. Perhaps it is all part of the ascension process, personally retooled for Gordon. Meanwhile, the planet reverberates with the violent upheavals of fear and anger. Ideologies scream their certainties at each other as governments wallow in electoral deception and cater to their corporate sponsors. No doubt about it, it's a bitch and there's no end in sight. But at this stage I do see that suffering is, and just as joy is, that power dances with its inevitable loss, that the virtues of poverty and wealth compete for the model high ground, that cultures and species rise and fall, that the design of galaxies equals that of the subquantum chaos physics like to cackle about. God is everywhere in the design, but only if you want to see him, or her. If you don't care for his brand of immanent divinity, he'll gladly disappear into the cold, purposeless calculations of scientists who see consciousness as a mere epiphenomenon in the bustling computer known as the brain. The God in God consciousness is like that, endlessly adaptable to your moment-to-moment needs, appearing and disappearing as your doubt and self-belief jostle for momentary supremacy. There and not there simultaneously. Mystical mumbo-jumbo and the meaning of life. Take your pick. I know what mine is. 2004 that was, More Adventures in Eternity. And getting back to the earlier theme of who we were before we were humans on the planet Earth, and are part of us still interacting or being with ourselves, our extended selves, on other planetary systems. Well, the book, The Gathering, Meetings in Higher Space, by William Gammill, for quite a few years ago. Let me see, when did this come out? Hampton Roads published this in 2001. And he has some experiences and thoughts on these matters that I think are quite relevant to the discussion. By activating your personal light body, you align your own energy fields with those subtle energies of your higher self, making service, health, and spiritual transformation priorities in your life. Creating a magnetic force field around you, your light body provides personal protection as the Earth goes through its changes. Indeed, it may be the only means for staying in body and in consciousness during Earth's more apocalyptic changes. The personal light body itself consists of two force fields, interlocked and counter-rotating in a single space at such speed that they may appear as a sphere of light. You may experience it as a geometric construct of light, a diamond crystal with yourself in the middle. Accurate, but not exactly true. My own light body experience came when I woke up one night with what felt like severe acid reflux. This went on for over an hour and eventually evolved into high chest pains. By then I was having trouble breathing and couldn't swallow. I was convinced I was having a heart attack as this continued for another 2 hours and then eased off, and eventually left me feeling exhausted and relieved. I slept, deep and dreamless. When I woke up, I called my doctor and explained to him what had happened. He asked me to come for tests that afternoon. I did, and we found nothing. My heart was healthy. Other than my blood pressure being high and erratic, I was fine. We decided it must have been some sort of allergic reaction. I couldn't imagine to what or to whom, but that explanation satisfied me. I went home and didn't think about it anymore. 3 days later it happened again. Then a week later, each time followed by a trip to the doctor resulting in the same diagnosis. Eventually I gave up on the doctor. My blood pressure finally settled down, but the condition continued with unnerving regularity for the next 4 months. What follows made it tolerable. One night in the middle of an episode, I became aware of a soft gold light spinning around me, around my entire body. Actually, it seemed to emanate from the core of my being out, creating an energy field within and around me that I could only describe as the Christ self. I say that now, but at the time I had no name for what was going on. I felt peaceful, comforted, almost ecstatic. I was still in physical pain, wondering if I might die from it, but it was all right. Everything was all right. I came to understand that an operation was in progress, an excavation of sorts. The bowl of my heart was being hollowed out, being made larger, deeper, enough to hold a compassionate heart. And this body of soft gold light surrounding me has been activated to hold me in body and in consciousness during the operation. Don't ask me how or what any of that means. I don't know. What I do know is that that sphere of light has not left me since. It is my light body, my own living Merkabah. And it seems to emanate from the dimension of Christ consciousness, the fifth dimension as I understand it, the dimension of nonlinear manifestation. Over the next few months, the work on my heart continued, and I began to understand that love is indeed the key to higher consciousness. Nothing of the mind, nothing of the intellect. Our light body becomes more alive and accessible as our love for life grows. as we let go and forgive, as we begin to love our enemies, as we are able to see the perfection in each moment with every breath. Our own living light body begins to function on higher and higher levels. Love is the ultimate emotion and unifying force throughout the universe. Activation of the personal light body is based on the sacred geometry of love and compassion. Once activated, it amplifies the energies of the heart, making possible our realignment with Source and creating a sacred space of love and joy around us. It is literally the living force field of energy that surrounds every living thing and activates when a person is in a state of unconditional love and service. 4 months into this surgical education, everything came to a halt. It stopped as suddenly as it started. All the symptoms went away, for good. I mean, that was over 3 years ago, and I haven't had a single episode since. During that 4 months, however, I developed a working relationship with my light body that continues to this day. Use of the Merkaba activates synchronicity. What you need, the universe will put immediately in your path. And it makes the ascension process possible by disengaging you from the cycle of karma and reincarnation. Interesting point. Disengaging you from the cycle of karma and reincarnation. I'll have to ponder that one. Simply put, the light body is a system for activating increased levels of communication or living energy transmitter. We all have one. One just has to activate it to connect into the grid systems of the earth, the Christ grid, or any number of higher dimensions. Activation of the light body helps integrate all the cells by removing the veils of separation between levels of consciousness and physical reality, i.e., makes possible the integration of all the separate cells into a seamless fabric of consciousness operating on multiple dimensions simultaneously. Makes possible the integration of all the separate selves into a seamless fabric of consciousness operating on multiple dimensions simultaneously. Of course, as part of the ascension process, it does not resonate with the more dense emotional frequencies. Fear, doubt, anger, all that. For that reason, we are first given only limited access to the light body, and then taught to use it in bits and pieces. This while the complexion of our intent and our integrity are measured. The purpose of all this is to elevate the species, not to send it into perdition. Intent is everything. However, it is not necessary to consciously activate your light body in order to ascend. It will certainly bring you into a greater awareness of what is going on and perhaps help you to be a more active participant, co-creator of your own universe. But we are collective in our consciousness, collective in our soul. This is a collective initiation. What one gets, we all get. What one gets, we all get. While our level of participation and awareness, even our destinies, may be different, no one will be left behind. The ascension can occur at an individual level, within a group, or as part of the collective experience. You will ascend when you are ready, whether you do it alone or as part of the planetary shift. There is no given time frame for the ascension. At an individual level, there are ascensions occurring daily. There are many beings who are incarnate because they have volunteered to serve by testing the light body experiment, the noble experiment. They will be the first to be accommodated into a higher dimension of reality, the first wave. Of course, all this is in terms of focus of consciousness and dimensional placement within the grids. They won't beam up or disappear necessarily. Now you see, there's the kind of like the New Age version of the rapture. We're not disappearing. Part of us is going up on the elevator to the 13th floor and staying there. And you'll be able to communicate, or you are communicating with that part on the 13th floor. You're not all disappearing up there. Part of the anchor is still on this level, and that's where the Christian rapture metaphor is insufficient. Not completely wrong, just insufficient. For the rest of us, the light body program will continue until we are ready, and then we will shift. Ascension is not difficult or complicated. It is a change that occurs in an instant, but you are still here. The sun will still shine and the stars will continue to come and go. Your mortgage won't go away. The difference is your ability to live in and feel joy. Even the word higher is misleading because the point of all this is not to go higher or deeper or faster. It's the ego that needs high and low. The goal of your life is freedom and fulfillment. Fulfillment isn't achieved until you know God as completely as God knows itself. The easiest way to verify that ascension has happened is to note the quality of joy in a person's life. Defined as samadhi, ecstasy, rapture, joy, is a state of oneness with whomever or whatever you think God is. You may experience it as being your center or being on your center. It is that clear space you sometimes achieve in deep meditation when the light is flowing unimpeded and you feel no separation, an absolute oneness with all that is. Whatever brings you to that pleasure or feeling of lightness, whatever you would define as joy, that is the pathway to that state. The beginning of the ascension is when a person begins living life by creating their fantasies as their reality and finds joy in what they have created. A group working on ascension has a tremendous advantage because fifth dimensional consciousness is a consciousness of oneness. In other words, the group is one. As you increase your vibrational level, you will be drawn to small groups of like vibration. You will be drawn not by deeds but by intent. Small groups will actually be drawn to higher dimensional zones. Working with a group gives each member a chance to learn to relate both as individuals and from oneness within the group. It creates an enormous synergistic energy. Each of you is more powerful than you would be if you were alone. Islands of light will form around those who remain here to serve and have raised their vibration very high. They will create vibratory frequency bands that surround their group, their homes, their vehicles, and places of work. They will be led to safe zones of higher dimensions, not work-free zones, but safe zones. But don't think of yourself as being specially selected or superior to others who are working elsewhere. It is yours to do because it is in you to do it. It is your job. Your group is simply the one appropriate for you. The same truth can and will be experienced through different forms. Brackets. I grew up in a religious environment tradition that pretty much figured if you didn't think their way, there was something wrong with your thinking. Most of us probably grew up that way. I finally got free of that and joined a small group of people who meditated daily and studied religious texts from all over. We were so proud that we had broken with tradition and found the truth. As our group grew in number, we took on rules and regulations and began to develop an identity. We became sort of the Hindu equivalent to hard-shell Baptists, changing our costumes but not our limitations. End brackets. Now there's a New Age legend. That happened to a lot of groups. Strict identification with one form, however conducive to spirit, is merely an extension of ego. We each have a role or purpose to fulfill, but one person's task is never more important than another's. You are judged by how you judge others. How you treat the ones who are asleep will be the measure of your own salvation. How you treat the ones who are asleep will be the measure of your own salvation. How true. Everything is happening so fast right now that there's simply no time to spend in a specific place at a particular altar paying homage to a singular method or teacher. Don't wait for someone else to do it for you or tell you how. Pursue your own ascension according to your own understanding and service. As you move through the cycles of prayer to meditation to contemplation to union to one, you will be shown. You are all of these on the run, so to speak. All that you need is already present inside of you, waiting to be recognized. The altar is movable. The ascension is equal. You will experience it in whatever way you can accept it. As individuals and groups focus on ascension, they should focus on recreating their lives as expressions of joy. As you do this, you shift everyone you come into contact with in your daily life, broadcasting the energy of joy to them and waking them up to that frequency. The mass ascension will occur when the majority of ascending humans on the planet are existing in a state of joy, and not until. In this dimensional universe, free will is divine law. When the majority of you are living from joy, the planetary experience will have moved into a world of love and oneness. When the majority of you have given up the game of polarity because you have all learned that you could, and all of it, and have, by your own choice, moved into joy and oneness, the mass ascension will occur. Until that time comes, and it will, the light body progression will continue. The ascension will take as long as it takes. In the end, humanity as a collective decides the timing of this spectacular event. Free will cannot be tampered with, not even for a good cause, not even to create the ascension. So be patient with the ascension. It means more of you coming here, more of you embodied, more of you remembering where you came from and what you are here to do. And as you bring that here, you lift everything into a higher expression by the mere fact that you can connect inside, and you become peace, you become wisdom, you become love. You assist everything in your experience, visibly and invisibly. Perhaps the best way in which you can serve God, serve all mankind, serve the planet, and serve yourselves is to create your lives as expressions of joy. Be ruthless in evaluating your lives and clear everything that does not bring you joy. Come into integrity. Let go of old emotions, old issues, even old relationships that are consuming the energy you could be feeling joy with. This path makes the ascension very simple. All that's required is for each individual to begin focusing on and taking responsibility for his own life. There are no victims here, and everyone is responsible for keeping his own cage clean. I see that's from a journal of April 1997. Now, continuing on from a chapter called My First 4 Billion Years. This was not a bedroom scene. No sleeping or dreaming is involved. Lying on my couch, fully awake, my eyes wide open, I began to remember things I could not possibly have known before, and which I do not recall ever having read. 4 billion years ago, it seems, the human species was a root race scattered throughout the universe, and seemed to have no real home galaxy or planet of its own. They were always in the working class, almost slave labor. For whatever reasons, it was determined that it would be the subject of what would thereafter be referred to as the noble experiment. As such, the human species was harvested from all over the universe and brought to Andromeda. I'm not sure if that's the Andromeda galaxy or the sun system in our own galaxy. Perhaps I'm supposed to know, but I don't. We were there to attend pre-Earth school alongside a race of light beings who had volunteered to participate in the experiment. We all came together on Andromeda and began our schooling. On Andromeda, we went through the long orientation. I can't really say how long since, outside of the third dimension, time has a way of expanding or collapsing to accommodate the situation. How true. The rest of the events is in sort of all-time now. It schedules events, but it doesn't keep time. Not really. For that same reason, I'm not sure if 4 billion years means 4 billion years either. I'm simply telling you what I was told. Anyway, each light being was assigned a group or family of humans to go through the experiment with. We began our training by putting humans on and taking them off, like costumes or spacesuits we had to get used to. We began our training by putting humans on and taking them off, like costumes or spacesuits we had to get used to. Incarnation, putting on a body. A little body, a baby body, but it grows. But we do put it on like a coat. Each day we were required to put at least one human on and wear it all day. Not until we went to sleep at night could we take it off. I remember how unnatural, even suffocating the human suits were at first, with buttons and knobs and strange appendices I had no use for at the time. We drafted the first plans for a personal ego body to take care of the human suits while on planet Earth, but no one was willing to try one on yet. A primary element of the experiment was the loss of memory it required. A loss of memory was necessary in order to be totally immersed in the experiment as a local. We had to be convinced and convincing in every detail. It's like what the researchers say about the hybrids now walking amongst us. We had to be convinced and convincing in every detail. They're trying pretty hard to do that. In order to do this, a large part of our genetic memory would need to be erased to make it authentic. We had to really appear to be locals. We had to believe we were humans. I remember sitting in class with a lot of other beings from around the universe, all of us laughing at the very idea of giving up our memory, thinking we really were our costumes. It looked interesting, even fun. Being gods, being there then, none of us could have imagined how total that loss of memory would be, or the consequences. After our orientation and schooling on Andromeda, we were transported to the star system Lyra Vega, deep in the center of this galaxy, the Milky Way. We were 11th density dimension beings, star beings, not quite human yet, but the third density was under construction, and the planet Earth was being seeded with terra firma in preparation for our arrival. From Lyra, we broke up into smaller groups and went to different parts of the galaxy for more training. Some went to Sirius to learn six-dimensional physics, sacred geometry, light engineering, all that stuff. Some went to the Pleiades to be fitted for a feeling nature. Passion at one end of the spectrum, the compassionate heart at the other. To be fitted for a feeling nature on the Pleiades, passion at one end of the spectrum, the compassionate heart at the other. Now that's what I think the Greys wanted from us, or thousands of years of exercising passion and compassion. They saw it as being warlike, which we are and were, but they didn't understand how they were related. You indulge in the passion, and it creates its counterbalance, compassion, sympathy, mercy, etc. And that's why they'd forgotten how to nurture children, and how the abductees were given weedy-looking babies to nurture, because they didn't know how to do it. They'd trained it out of themselves. They did not realize that being smart, clever, and high-tech would not do them any good. That's why they were dying out, and that's why they needed us. And that's why I never accepted their bullshit. I mean, I accepted them, but I didn't accept their post-facto rationalizations and nonsense. It was a story that they told themselves to make themselves feel good. And they're still doing it now. Kind of like our government's lying to us about this, that, and the other, because they think we're children and we don't really need to know, and they're looking after us. We have our best interests at heart. Actually, they don't. They've got their own best interests at heart. But they're coming around bit by bit. They're not getting anywhere with their little game plan either. We're starting to see through all their lies, deception, and game show silliness. We tried on our emotional bodies for the first time, briefly. It was at once exhilarating and maddening. The only thing that made that experience tolerable was the fact that we still had our memory intact. We rethought and redesigned the personality ego again. We visited the Universal Library at Alcyone, and the Pleiades, even helped build a new wing in the library dedicated solely to the tracking progress of our experiment through the universe. Be an interesting library to go to, wouldn't it? We laughed again at the prospect of building a library and an elaborate set of records in a place that we would soon not remember how to find or even that it existed. I can really see the laughter in that. I don't know about you. We eventually came back together again at Arcturus to be retooled and re-intentioned. Our jobs were made more specific. No two of us would have exactly the same job. Everyone was necessary. No one could be lost on this mission. If one got lost or left behind or injured in some debilitating way, we were all responsible for them. We were still in all time, but we built a chamber dedicated to linear time and experimented with the effects of memory loss. For the first time since our recruitment and training began, Andromeda seemed like a long way off. Some of us could barely remember it. Are you with me so far? We've gotten through the easy part. Leaving Arcturus and moving into the solar system, for most of us Venus was our last stop before arriving on planet Earth. Our mission was taken out of the classroom and made more specific, more personal. Our task was somehow to create a new species, a new planetary being with interdimensional capabilities. In other words, the ability to live and operate consciously on all dimensions simultaneously. Well, that's what the Ascended Masters do, and we're all kind of aiming for, but it's interesting to see it go back that far. As progenitors of this new species, we are genetically related to at least 22 different extraterrestrial species and endowed with spirit. More than that, we have free will. Genetically related to 22. More than any other species, it seems we do have free will. The gods and goddesses are confined to their own realm. Angels are confined to their own realm. All beings from inner space and outer space, including the brothers, are confined to their own realm. We alone are not confined, at least not in any ultimate sense. All realms exist inside of us. As forerunners to a divinely human species, the unique aspect of the one that we most represent is free will. I agree with that. It is God's gift to us for participating in the noble experiment. God gave us free will and bound itself to this. Choose what you will, there are no mistakes. Even those choices that seem to be an error, God finds complete and satisfying. We are living in a wonderfully volatile time in which anything can and will happen. Wonderfully volatile, oh indeed. Depending on our intent and sincerity of our desires. Free will is a divine right of this dimensional universe. We are free to create the universe of our dreams and imaginings, limited only by our willingness to accept responsibility for our being, our soul, and the living of its lives. The more responsibility we accept, the more free will we are allowed. That's a good way of putting it. The human species was chosen to be the inheritors of this experiment. Lab rats made into what? Gods? At least. More than gods, perhaps. Well, that's getting hefty. More than gods? How do you get past that? So the human species was harvested from all over the universe. Prior to that, they were not born, but grown and cultivated as a slave race, the laboring community of the universe. As such, they had limited consciousness, no free will, and no soul as you and me understand it. All of these things had to be added to the human DNA one at a time, gradually over a 4 billion year period. One day in the life of God, I'm told. First, consciousness had to be added. With it, free will. These two elements work together. Enough consciousness is necessary to know that there are choices, and enough free will is needed to make them. They had to learn to make choices. Not right choices over wrong choices, but any choice. Yes. Then they had to learn that each choice has its consequences. In other words, man is given free will before he is given wisdom, so he is destined to make mistakes and learn from them. Perfect. Eventually, the feeling nature was added, the emotional body was built, the compassionate heart was ignited, the soul infusion took place. Soul infusion. When higher mind is made to balance and blend with the compassionate heart, soul is generated and infused into a living body. Spirit comes alive. This is true throughout the universe. The task or experiment we have undertaken is the infusion of soul into an entire species, thereby creating an entirely new species, the planetary Christed child being with the interdimensional consciousness enough not to know the path. Not only to know the path, but to walk the path, to be it. Knowing the path may be accomplished through higher mind, but to be able to walk it requires heart as well, and soul infusion makes that possible. It is the object of all this, not simply to ascend into spirit or move from one dimension to another, but to understand that soul infusion is not the only means of ascension, but the point of it. Living, being alive, requires that a physical body be endowed with consciousness. Soul infusion is an absolute prerequisite to living in spirit. We, as a race of light beings living in the spirit, fully conscious and infused with soul, volunteered to inhabit the entire human species in order to walk them through the process, to influence but not manipulate their choices, to act as midwife to their birth into the celestial realms, the universe of spirit. And that is why so much is made of bringing the heart and mind into a perfect balance. Each time that balance occurs, we are graced by the presence of a higher mind and the compassionate heart. A deeper awareness of soul takes place, and more soul is infused into the body of the human consciousness. The conclusion of the noble experiment will be the creation of an entirely new planetary being. What we are beginning to remember finally is the totality of our spirit, our soul, the completeness of it. The only reason we are ever out of sorts, out of integrity, is because we have forgotten some element of our soul. We have not sinned, we have just forgotten. We have not sinned, we have just forgotten. And it is in the process of our remembering that consciousness and soul are instilled into our human charges, the individual human species. It is of interest to note that during the entire 3 days of these transmissions, I ate very little, slept in fits and spurts. The phone didn't ring once. Not a soul, incarnate anyway, came to my door. While I am something of a city hermit, I do have a network of friends and acquaintances that come by or call daily. But for 3 days there was nothing. Just me and you. Somewhere in the middle of the third day, however, enough space opened up in the transmission for me to voice some concerns. Actually, I didn't really voice anything. As in the past, all I had to do was think it, and they answered what seemed relevant. Most of all, I just wanted to know why I was suddenly remembering all this now. Why is it necessary to remember it at all? And why are there days in which it feels more like a punishment than a blessing? To what purpose is all this? And again, just who are you? They told me that we, the race of light beings who volunteered to assist the human species, have merged and blended with our human counterparts in order to fully understand, appreciate, and have compassion for their condition. This descent into human consciousness has been mislabeled as the fall from grace. Oh, isn't that good? And indeed, it is a separation from grace. But it was not a mistake, nor is it punishment for having lived a life of sin and foolish choices, unless service to the divine is a foolish choice. Descending into the human species was a courageous and unselfish act of service, motivated by compassion. Of course, you are always subject to the laws of the place and dimension you have chosen to serve. We understood that in the abstract, but until we had seen it from the human perspective, we did not know how limiting these laws could be, how oppressive and painful are the effect of those laws on those of us who are equal to the universe and beyond any limitation or law of limitation. We came to serve the human species in a third density world, and we are subject to all the laws of that world. We take on the human species and in and about ourselves, to the point of identifying with them totally. In fact, not until we began to believe we were human did our part of the experiment actually take effect, becoming fully incarnate, fully planted on the physical plane. A lot of talk about that. And it's all true and useful. You don't really get the point of it until you're fully human, until you're fully physical, fully incarnate. And that doesn't happen in childhood, it's much later. We're as we reach critical mass and right on schedule, we are triggering to begin to remember. That's where we are now, at different stages of our remembering who we are, what we are, where we came from, and ultimately why we are doing all this. Soul is the recorded memory of who and what we are in the universe. Our job is simply to remember the totality of our soul, that we are part and parcel of the entire universe. As the deepest part of our self remembers another aspect of its soul, the human ego responds to that with a aha, an experience of enlightenment. Enlightenment and soul are different expressions of the same event. It is in the process of our remembering that the human species wakes up. We are remembering. The human inside of us is waking up. Resonant evolution, knowing who you are and emanating what you are, causes the evolution of everything in your environment to accelerate, and it causes the human residing inside of each of you to wake up. And with each waking, each quickening, more light is let in, more consciousness is let in, more compassion. The result is that more soul is infused into the human species, and with it, the attending spirit. And I do feel that with as I evolve and increase in vibration and consciousness, the various elementals and nature spirits in the garden right there, they're all evolving too. They're coming along for the ride, and that's why they're there. I mean, it's not just why they're there, but it's part of it. And I do feel that quite regularly. We'll get on to fairies and elementals fairly soon. We've talked about devas, but I've got a house full of them. They've been here for ages. I invited them in, they're here. And it's a bit like being the Earl of Downton Abbey. You have to say hello to them all every day, and if you don't, they get a little irked. And they have a little place in the hierarchy. There's a guy that's the butler, the house angel, and little elementals in the different rooms that think they run that different room. And they do kind of, but, they get a little bossy sometimes. Will you close that door? Will you leave it open? And I go, hey, wait a minute, I'm in charge here. I'll close the door. It's quite funny. But, and they run the garden just like elementals do. They tell me what to plant and where to plant it, yada, yada, yada. But I do feel that they're coming along for the ride towards full enlightenment, in as much as they can handle it. Just like taking the kids on vacation, really. You don't leave them home, you take them with you. At the soul level, you incarnate not only in other dimensions, but on other planets and other systems. As you enter the light, your frequency increases until you vibrate in a new expression or dimension of who you are. You are not related to the Pleiadians and the Sirians and the Arcturians. You are them. You are not like the brothers. You are the brothers, not similar to, but different aspects of the one same being. As part of a family or soul group larger than you can imagine, each of you carries a different part of light project that you have come here to accomplish. To do that, all you have to do is reflect and resonate your perfect lineage. It is a lineage that comes from star systems you are beginning to remember, star systems that resonate in the diamond frequency, spinning at the speed of thought, yet maintaining your physical body. This is your lineage and your destiny, carried in your DNA as memories of these star systems, as well as of pre-Atlantean Egypt that existed before the free will mutation of your genetic codings, that latter being the aspect of your agreement that you obviously don't remember. It is part of your soul contract, however, necessary for the successful completion of your assignment on planet Earth. Some of you whose consciousness has been raised may understand what's going on, but many of you do not. It is a time of confusion, and those who teach, those who know teach those who don't. That's kind of where I'm at. Many of you will try to deny what is taking place because your belief system is just not big enough to accommodate what is going on, but no soul who has ever lived here will miss out. Memory of your light body is returning to you. Your urge to remember is the real thing in your body, as strong as any sexual urge you ever had. It will become your highest aspiration. In the meantime, think of this as a banquet of opportunity, and everyone who is anyone is here. Mother, Father, God, all the little gods, your galactic brothers and sisters. If you can imagine them, they're here, hanging out interdimensionally, watching and observing, wondering when does the party start. Some are even making side bets on what might happen next and just what you will or might turn into. In a universe of free will, there are no guarantees. You are witnessing the unfoldment of a grand will, the divine will, as it blends with your own free will to co-create the ascension. And just who are we, you ask? That's the key to recovering your memory. Remembering that there is only ever one of us here, that only one of us ever has been here, and it's you. Suddenly the transmissions were over, and I knew it. I was hungry, very hungry. I ate everything in the house and went to bed. It was 8 in the evening and not dark yet. Thank you, William Gammill, for that 20-year-old inspiration. How appropriate and how useful for us all. And that is the end of tonight's, this morning's. We're at dawn again. And be inspired, and we'll continue on very soon.